The first thing I'm going to do on my creature design is sew the face. So I've cut out two, and I'll put one aside till quite a bit later. This will be the front of the face. I've cut out two felt eyes, and felt is a good fabric to use because it's thick. If you choose to use flannel, you'll have to interface it first to make it thick. This eye is so small, I've threaded a needle and knotted it. I'm going to hand sew it on. Sometimes it is easier to hand sew. And I'm just going to do a little running stitch just up and down on the black fabric, and I'm using black thread on black fabric, so you're not going to see it. Now I could zigzag this on with the machine, but again, it's so tiny, it's going to be a little difficult to do that. Or I could hand sew on buttons, or I could glue on eyes. There's a number of options to use for doing eyes. Now that I've got one on, I'll place the other, make sure it looks even, and I'm not going to knot the thread. I'm just going to pull it from one side to the other and knot it when I'm completely finished. But notice I don't want to pull it too tight or I'll crinkle the face. So again, line up the eyes, make sure the thread is loose, and just do a little running stitch. Now that I've secured it, I can sew this eye in a little bit tighter. Just sew along the outside edge of the eye. I'm probably doing about half a dozen stitches on each eye. And then when it's secure, I'll pull it through to the other side and do a knot. The easiest way to do a knot is make a loop, pull it through, hold it with your finger, and do it several times in the same spot so that each time the knot gets a little bit bigger. And then I can have a good sized knot, cut the thread off. Now the next thing I want to do is sew on the muzzle. Decided to put a muzzle on the face of my bear. But before I do that, I know I want to put a little nose piece on the muzzle. And that I will do by machine. So I line it up, and I'm going to take off the metal foot and put on the clear. And then I'm going to change the tension at the top from 4 till 3, so there's a little less pressure coming down from the foot. I'll put the stitch pattern from A1 to A3, the stitch width from 0 to about 4, and the stitch length is going to go from 2.5 standard length down to 1. So I want a tight zigzag. Now I'm zigzagging felt onto felt, and I've already put black thread in so that it blends. If you use the same color thread, it will blend and not show any mistakes or imperfections as much. So make sure the felt piece is where you want it. Whenever it feels awkward, pivot, needle in, foot up, and adjust it, making sure you put that foot back down. Go all the way around till you get back to where you started. And I'm just zigzagging right on the very outside edge. When I get back, I do a little reverse, and then cut my threads. And now I am ready to put this on to the face. But I don't think I want to use black. I think I'm going to switch my thread. And just so you know, bobbins actually fit on the top. So if you can't find the right color thread on the thread rack, just go to the bobbins. But I'm going to put this pink thread on so that it blends. Because remember, a similar color thread blends. Or you can use a contrast color to pop it. So I'll thread this, keeping all my settings the same on the zigzag. Now the one thing I am going to add is tearaway interfacing, because now I'm sewing felt onto fleece. Felt is a woven fabric, doesn't stretch much, but fleece is a stretchy fabric and does stretch quite a bit and is thick. So I'm going to put a piece of fabric bigger than the face piece underneath. Make sure I've got that felt piece where I want. It's small, so I'm not going to bother pinning it, but if it was larger, I'd probably throw a few pins in. I still have it on the zigzag. I'm going to zigzag right on the edge of the pink. Whenever it feels awkward, needle in, foot up, pivot, making sure I put the foot back down. And it definitely looks neater if you do it right on the edge of the felt. And having that tearaway underneath helps to keep it flat, but it also helps to, with your hands, to keep it flat. Don't allow it to get puckered on you. So whenever it's awkward, stop, pivot. When I get back to where I started, I'm going to evaluate if I think it looks good. Now, when the thread is the same color, it's not as big an issue, but if I were to use, say, a white color thread, I might see a little too much pink fabric through it. So then what you can decide to do to get a stronger look of pink on the outside, or the color you've chosen, is to go around twice. So I'm just going to do that to give a more solid look to the zigzag threading on the edge of the muzzle. It definitely does look better if you go twice. You can even go 3 times if you like. So go all the way around. And it seems easier to go around the second time, getting close to where my original thread is. Do a few stitches reverse and stop. Now, if I had more things to sew on here, like cheeks or whatnot, I would keep this tearaway interfacing on. But I'm pretty much done the sewing part, so I can literally tear it off. You just pull it, and it tears away. Hence the name tearaway interfacing. Now, you can leave the part in the middle, or you can make a little cut and pull that off too. It's up to you. Doesn't really matter. And now I want to put a little smile on. I'm going to draw it first, just with a fine tip permanent marker. And then I'm going to zigzag it. I also could straight stitch it if I wanted, but I'm going to make the zigzag even smaller. I'm going to put it down to 2, so it looks kind of like a narrow line. Put the foot down, make sure I'm lined up over that little edge, put a few stitches reverse. And by having that line, I'm taking out the guesswork of where to sew the smile. Get to the end, needle in, I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to sew it again. Oops, just making sure I'm in the right spot. Back to where I started, and I'm going to do it a 3rd time. And this time I'm going to increase it just a little bit, up to 3, to totally cover that line that I drew with the small permanent fine tip marker. So therefore there shouldn't be any ink showing through. You could also use tailoring chalk, but it's a little harder to draw a fine tip line with that. There's the beginning and end. There. Pull that out, cut my threads, and now the face is done.